Well, hi, I believe we're live, and this is Lori from Lori Tries Life. And I have the most amazing guest. It is John Ballantree, who is a professional tarot reader, student of the Tarot for Life, right? And he's an author and a teacher. And what aren't you? John, can you give us an introduction of yourself?
Um, I'm just as I'm just a Scottish fellow in a basement just outside Toronto, and that's kind of I don't know what to say.
And
I
that's it.
mean, it's more uh, I don't know. You ask me an open-ended question like that, and I
I
don't know what to
know.
say.
Well, those are the best kind, at
Well,
least
I'm
in an
I,
interview.
I'm sure details will emerge as we go into the conversation.
They will. They will. What do you think about this new type of process where you can go online and speak to lots of people?
I think it's great.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. I was remembering some years ago when I wanted to find out information, I had to go to the public library and look in books. But now, there was one time I emailed. I was switching off for the night, and I emailed somebody in Australia. I'm in Canada. I emailed somebody in Australia, and in the time that it took me to begin to shut down the program, they'd already replied to an email. And so being able to do that, I think, is really, really valuable. And we can do
Yeah.
lots of things. Oh,
It's
okay.
amazing. I think it's amazing.
So
And
and it's sort of cutting out the middleman.
yeah,
Where I mean, with the paperback and the Kindles and so on,
yeah,
um, you don't need an agent, and then you go to a publishing company, and then you have to wait 3 years for the book to be published.
right.
So the that's I have this. I used to send out catalogs to people, and I used to reprint old books. I used to reprint 17th century astrology books.
Oh, wow.
It was a company called BALLANTRAE Reprint, and I found and bought all these old um, uh, astrology books from the 17th century England and various other places, and I would reprint them and bind them and sell them to people. And so then it died because people just scanned them and put them online.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of information now available that wouldn't have been available
right.
before, and better
Yeah,
to have an educated population
right.
than one that's kept in the dark, I think.
Yeah. And it gives people opportunities that wouldn't otherwise, have an opportunity to.
Yeah, people like
Um,
you who can now have their own channel
I
and
know. Who would have thought?
that's right. So, but I mean, it's good. It's great. Good. Do
Yeah,
more of it, and we should
yeah,
all do it. This
yes.
pandemic, right? Remember
Yeah,
the pandemic? It
yeah,
occurred to me right at the very beginning, we should take advantage of this. People are going to be at home. We should read poetry and study and think and talk to each other and learn languages and make good use of the time. And yet, people, 2.5 years have gone by, and well, 2 and a bit years, and people are kind of bored and a terrible
yeah,
waste of an opportunity.
yeah.
There's
I,
a California real estate fellow called Tom Ferry, and I think the president of the United States should have hired Tom Ferry to get everybody organized. He'd have been really good. Just to get people making good use of their
yeah,
time. By all
yeah,
means, lie around and do nothing if that's what you want. But
sure.
if you're lying around and you're bored and becoming bad tempered because of it, then there are ways around it. There are solutions, and we are better to
Right,
look for a
right.
solution.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You you've been acquainted with the tarot for how many years now? Well,
since 1975.
oh wow. So you've I think anybody over the age of 50 has a unique perspective on the world because it's changed so fast in such a short amount of time. So we have like references back to going to the library. I mean, I was a regular at the library.
Yep.
We have all those references, but yet now we have this new technology. And I think it makes for a unique type of opportunity for people, that understand old ways and can incorporate them into their life. And that's one thing that in investigating you, I found out that you're very well rounded. I mean, which is great with your teaching. The way you teach is amazing because you use references that people can remember and people can relate to. Like you use poetry, you use just anecdotes from your life, and tell me what teaching means to you, or why you continue to teach.
I don't like the word teach. I just sort of
Okay.
do that's what I said at the beginning. I'm just this Scottish fellow in a basement, and I just do what I feel like doing and put it out there. I don't think of myself as a teacher or anything. I just am me, and I do what I do, and I put it out there. And if people like it, good. If they don't, then it's nothing to do with me. Sorry to be so difficult, but I that's why I do what I do, because I enjoy it. And then
Yeah.
and if anybody wants to share it, then by all means share it. But I'm not interested in converting people or getting them on board or convincing them of anything or anything like that. I just I like what I like, and I just do what I do, and one thing leads to another, and I follow my nose and I follow instincts, and I ended up here. I had no intention of staying here, but because I used to travel in different places and put down roots for a year and in Europe in different places, but then I came to outside Toronto and got stuck. I got here in 1980, and it's 41, 2 years later, I'm still here. So anyway, but it's uh, I just do what I do. I don't have any suggestions for anybody else, or well, I
Well,
do sort of with tarot classes and so on, the tarot lessons, where if you want to learn the tarot, you don't learn meanings, you look at a card, come up with a couple of ideas that it might represent, and you write them down, and then you look at them a couple of days later and see if you can do more with it. And if you can't, that's okay, go back to it a week later. If you can do something with it, good. But it's a bit like, but you're not being intuitive or psychic. You're taking your lead from the picture on the card. Because I don't have time for, I don't have time for psychics, but I think the tarot's a lot better if you let it point you in a certain direction. And I would ramble on and on and on forever if you let me.
um, well, what I found was really interesting with you is you have the same deck. I've seen that deck for 13 years
I
on your.
started using it in 1976, 77, and
And
I take good care of it, and
mhm.
I don't let other people handle it. And my hands are always clean, and I put it on silk on a table and keep it clean, and so it still works. I mean, it's still in good shape after all these years, all the times I've shuffled it.
Yeah, I call you a purist. I don't know why, but you. There's no bones about it. You don't need another fancy. You don't need a fancy deck or the latest deck.
Well, I think
Really just
some people are collectors, and that's fine. I don't particularly
yeah.
collect things. Well, I look around and I've got all sorts of equipment like monitors and a printer and all sorts of things. But
But as far
I
as the tarot, the RWS and how what all the cards mean in different combinations, that's enough for you. The process, I think, is more important than a new deck.
it depends what you if you want to read cards. I think the only one that's readable really in itself is the Rider-Waite deck. I mean, you can use this Marseille and decks like that, but you need to use numerology or learn meanings. And it's much more difficult for normal people, regular people, to be able to look at a card and figure out what's going on. Because if you've got 7 coins in the Marseille deck, what do? You need numerology, you need something else. Whereas if you get the Rider deck, you can look at the picture and you've got 6 coins on a bush and you've got 1 coin at the foot of the person standing thinking. And it's about making decisions about what you're going to do next, or maybe making sure that the choice that you made was the right one because there's a coin at your feet. You've done something, you've made some decision. Was it the right one? And what are you going to do next? And you've got because there are 6 coins on the bush, you've got multiple directions you could go in or multiple roads you could take.
Right.
And that's from looking at the picture, because we live in a visual world.
Right.
You've got signs all over the place. Do this, don't do that. Walk, don't walk. Traffic lights, and we respond to visual signals all the time, and it's the same with a tarot deck. But a lot of decks, I think, is you've got the full card. People think it's quite easy to design your own tarot deck, and you can design a pretty deck, but can you design one that you can read? Probably not. I don't think there are really any deck. Well, there aren't many decks out there that can be read seriously or completely by somebody, by anybody. And I think that's what's important, is that everyone and anyone. We had a chat a few days ago, and you talked about should you learn astrology.
Right.
And it occurred to me earlier this morning, it's possible to learn Photoshop, right? And you've got you figure out how, or somebody shows you how to do certain things. But astrology isn't like Photoshop. Astrology is about planets circling the sun, and it's out there and it's extraterrestrial. So you can't learn astrology the way you can learn to do Photoshop. It's just a whole different thing. And so, on the other hand, anybody can learn to read the tarot. And so, if you're going to learn to, it's a bit like we have to make decisions, or we want to know how things are going to develop. And you can ask experts, but they can get it wrong. And you can pay people lots of money to give you the wrong answer. Mm-hmm. Whereas, there's a quote I came across by a journalist called Christopher Hitchens, and it's like it's not. This is not the quote, but it has to do with can't remember. It's like maybe it's like the most dangerous thing you can do is learn to trust yourself. So it's a good idea to begin to trust yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you are motivated to do something, then do it and see where it leads. And if you like where it leads, keep doing it, because you're happier. But if it turns out to be a terrible decision, you've learned something as well. Don't
Right.
do that anymore. And so you sort of do things and see how they work out instead of not bothering in the first place. There's a French singer called Patrick Bruel who did I, I can't remember the name of the song, but he says that it is better to have remorse than regret.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to be remorseful that you did something and it turned out badly than to have regret that you never tried it in the first place.
Right.
So what are
But
we
we
going to
don't
do?
think of it that way.
Well,
Most
no.
people don't think of it that way. We think of the things that we did wrong rather than learning from them.
Yeah, so stop it.
And I'm doing what I always do. I ignored the chat, which is bad. So
Okay,
I'm gonna say hi.
okay.
So it's a new world out there. It's a new world, John.
Well,
Uh,
no, it's an old world, but
it's
okay.
I'm gonna ask you about that. But Tangi, my dear friend and moderator, was the first one to show up. Thank you so much, Tangi. And I'm learning a different computer. And we discussed why you weren't here, and it was my fault. All it was my fault. I gave him the wrong. Shauna, Six of Wands, is here, and Ange from Tiny Trinkets and Tarot. Hi, everybody, saying hello to us. Strength Reverse. Amy is here. Angie from Tiny Trinkets and Tarot said that you have a great channel. She loves your tarot lessons.
Good. There's a new one out tomorrow.
Oh, good. Roman Biscotti, Tangi, was trying to help me. Help me through the chat, find out why I was screwing up. Amy's been watching your channel for years. I can hear my husband outside, so I'm gonna chastise him for for making me okay. Did I? If you have any, you're confused. If you have any questions for John, he has written a couple of books, and one of them I, of course, didn't bring in here, but I just got it yesterday. What's the name of your new book?
The tarot book.
The tarot book.
Hard to remember, I know, but
Yeah. And you just got it in actual. I like actual books. I'm not. It's hard for me to read online.
Yeah,
So
the paperback came out or became available on Monday morning, early on Monday
okay,
morning.
I just got it, so I'm happy about that. You said before I checked the chat that it's the same old world. I was wondering, like going back to what I said, you've seen a lot. I'm 55, and I know you've traveled. I haven't, but my point being that it is the same in many regards due to human nature. But do you think, given the landscape, like the pandemic and the just, I mean, we have learned technology-wise so much in such a short amount of time. Do you think we still have the same old problems, or is it a different world? How have you seen questions, I guess, from querents? Have they changed, or is it the same old human rat
Same
race?
old, it's the same old stuff.
It's the
I don't
same
mean
old.
stuff, yeah, but it is. I mean, we still read Shakespeare, who wrote 400 years ago, and he was writing about the human condition and about people and why we do what we do and what life is about and what it's for and why do we exist in the first place. And people still are looking for those answers to those kinds of questions. So, and funnily enough, my son came by this morning, um, and so he's a systems analyst in a company, and he was telling me about what's happening in the company because you've got a manager. It's a warehousing operation, and they deal with multiple big companies, and they've got their stock, and then they get orders and they ship it and keep control of it. And my son was talking about how a manager will come in and say, okay, we're going to do this, and then everybody tries to do it, but then the manager changes his mind a week later, and so my son can't believe how totally disorganized business is. So yes, he's got computers and he's got Excel and he's got various other programs that he uses to analyze data and to figure out reports and how to set things up properly. And in spite of all this technology, you still got people making stupid mistakes and not understanding that what they do is important. But they've got the choice of doing something and making it right or slacking off. Have you seen the movie Office Space?
Yes, I have.
Okay, it's so accurate about
it's hilarious
Bill
too.
Lumberg and how the fellow Peter comes in quarter of an hour late and he sits at his desk because it makes it look as if he's working, but he's not actually doing anything for an hour.
Yeah.
And that's so accurate, I think, in offices and businesses, big and small. So we could be organized and efficient if people were interested in being organized and efficient. But I'm thinking that in a lot of ways the world is just the same.
Yeah. I'm gonna go a little weird on you and ask you just weird questions. What do you think about aliens? Are they out there?
I don't care.
You don't care? What if they come down and take us?
Well, I'll deal with it if that happens, but I'm not thinking about it.
Okay,
Only because
you are a science fiction nerd, aren't you? Didn't like
I have read some science fiction.
Like let's see, time travel,
I once had the idea of writing a story about time travel. It was about a doctor in this lifetime who got sick, and he discovered that the reason he got sick was because 200 years ago he was a doctor as well, and he was using the wrong things and he was making people sick then. So he had to get a message to himself 200 years ago to change his ways. And how would you go about giving yourself a message for the future or the past? But I never did anything with it. I just had this brief moment of thinking about it.
That sounds like a great book.
Well, there was one I liked. I read this thing about Mercury. The god Mercury had the power to loose and bind. Right? So Mercury could make things come apart, but also Mercury could join things together and keep them stuck. And so I was imagining this somebody. No, I asked me something else. It gets too complicated.
Okay.
But the Mercury has the power to loose and bind. That idea. So you look at a tarot card, and so is the influence or does the card show loosening and making things maybe easier, or does loosening make it bad? So if you've got if you're cooking and baking something and the flour and the water don't mix together, that's a bad thing. But if you're baking and the flour and the water are joined together, that's a good thing. But in other circumstances, it can be the opposite. So it's just the idea of um, we can have all sorts of thoughts and ideas that we ignore. And one of the things I say to people in videos is pay attention to what you're thinking and the ideas that come to you, and write them all down and then think about them later, because you'd be amazed how many good ideas you're throwing away just because
Yeah.
you don't think about them, which
Yeah.
makes your life more difficult, because in a lot of ways you're wise and you've got good ideas, but maybe you don't believe in yourself, or you but then and if you actually try the ideas that you have and see how they work, then you're learning from it, and then you can make better decisions in the future.
You're very pro person. You're very pro confident. When you talk and when you teach, um, you you want it seems like you want to instill people with their own sense of worth. Like, you know, like you really try to pull that out of people, that they are worth it, and that to go forth with confidence and conquer, instead of always, questioning yourself. Am
It's
I
a
going to do it right or wrong? You could, think about that and waste your entire life.
Yeah, it's about time. People are. I mentioned when we had our little chat, or did I? I can't remember. I used to teach a class on communication in a local college, and I would say to people, you've got 2 minutes to write down every emotion you can think of. Did I tell you this?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so people had to write down emotions they could think of, like happy, sad, whatever it happened to be. And then I would write I would give them 2 minutes. And then I would write the words on the board. And seriously, every time I would get about 30 words from people, and 27, 28 of them were negative. People are programmed, or they're used to seeing depression, embarrassment, confusion, unhappiness. Hardly anybody thinks of excitement, interesting,
Right.
desire, you know. So it's a bit like people are brought up to be hard on themselves, to be,
Self-critical.
yeah, and which is fair enough, I suppose. But life is for the living, and let's be alive and let's live.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go like all quantum physics on you, but this is not the time for that. This is for tarot. So I'm going to ask you a different question and stay on topic for the sake of our guests. Which Sheila has come in. Hi, Sheila. Um, Gerald, I heard. Hey, hi, Gerald. Thank you for coming in. Um, Again, John Ballantree is a longtime student of the tarot. He doesn't say he's a teacher, but I am. And so if you have any questions about the tarot process, please type them in all caps and I'll try and see them. So I'm going to stick on tarot and ask you, a lot of people have trouble with reverse cards.
Yep.
Why do you do reverse, and is it important or?
Okay. If you're reading for a cat or a dog, then use all upright cards, because cats and dogs don't have very complicated lives. And cats and dogs don't understand time, right? Because you get a dog waiting for the master to come home or the mistress to come home, and the dog will stand at the front door, let's say, and it's not aware. It knows the person's coming back, but it doesn't know the person's coming back in 45 minutes. So they have no concept of time, really, whereas people do. And sometimes there are delays. Sometimes things don't go the way we expect or the way we plan. And How are we going to know this? Because it's an important factor. And the way we know it is if the card is upside down. If it's upright, then you're dealing with something. If it's upside down, you're dealing with a glitch or a delay or an unexpected turn of events, or somebody like if you get a court card, a king, a queen, a knight, or a page upside down, and it's the king of batons, let's say. This is somebody who they want to support you, they're willing to support you, and they say they will, but they can't or they don't because something turns up to prevent them, or because they never really wanted you in the first place. So a king upside down is a person who can't do what they want to do, or can't do what they say they're going to do, or can't do what they expect to do. And that's useful to know, rather than the king of batons upright saying to the questioner, it's going to work because this person will come along and help you out. But they don't. So if the card had been upside down, you would have said they may want to help you, but don't be surprised if something goes wrong and they can't. So you better have a plan B. Have a backup person so that if the person represented by the card can't show up for some reason, you've got somebody else you can turn to who's a backup, who's going to be able to fill in case they're needed. And that you get from a reverse card. How do you get that from the king upright? I don't know. I don't think you can, unless you want to be psychic and intuitive. And maybe you'll be right, but half the time you're going to be wrong. And I think we ought to aim for a high percentage of being in the right direction, not saying right or wrong, but a high percentage of being accurate in what you talk about. And if something's not going to work out as expected, you'd say to the questioner, don't get your hopes up. Or if you want it to happen this way, make sure you've got a plan B, or make sure you've got either something to make it happen, or else something else to do if it doesn't work out, something else that will be equally satisfying or equally enjoyable if the first plan doesn't work out. And that's why I think you have to use reverse cards.
Okay.
Because how else can you get subtleties like that for people?
Right.
It's okay if you're a dog or a cat, doesn't matter. But if you're a person, and people, even people with simple lives, they're really complicated.
Right. So we have a discussion in the chat. Are they're not the opposite all the time?
Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. But it depends on the question.
Okay. So how do you recommend somebody learn reversals? What kind of?
You say, okay, this card shows this, but it's upside down, so expect a glitch. Don't expect that everything is going to go smoothly. And you're alerting the questioner to, in the back of their mind, thinking, okay, because the questioner knows the people involved in the circumstances, and they know what might go wrong or what went wrong once before. The reader doesn't need to know any of this. You just need to give them a hint that, okay, things are not going to work out exactly as you want, so don't assume that they will. And that's going to get them thinking, okay, well, Bill's normally quite reliable, but I won't trust Bill this time. And they know all this, and so they handle the situation better.
Yeah. What about like significators, or like picking a card?
I think okay. I think what you do is, I covered this in a recent video. You pick a card to get an idea of the state of mind of the questioner at the time. So if you've got somebody who wants to know, am I going to meet somebody and have a good romance, right? Something like that. And you pick a card and you get a good card, like the Four of Batons or something like that, or the Sun card upright. So you know the person's it's telling you something about the questioner at that moment. You know they're optimistic and confident and looking. Whereas if you get the reverse Queen of Cups, that's their state of mind, that they're expecting they're going to be let down, or they want revenge, or they're going to use underhanded means to get their own way. And that's so if you're optimistic and confident, you're going to bring out the best in people. So you meet somebody, and maybe you're going to meet somebody who's slightly lacking in confidence. They're going to perk up when they see you. Whereas if the questioner is represented by the Queen of Cups reversed, and they meet somebody who lacks confidence, they're going to walk away because they don't quite trust this person represented by the Queen of Cups reversed. So you sort of get an idea from the card that you pick who you're dealing with at that time. The person can be very different tomorrow, but it tells you something about their frame of mind and their understanding at the moment of asking the question. So you give them an answer based on, or you incorporate your idea. Because if somebody is represented, but let's say you've got somebody who is, you pick a card, you get the Sun upright or the Magician. You know they're optimistic and they're on the lookout for good opportunities. Whereas if you get, and so if you get a difficult card, you know you can talk to them and say, okay, this is going to be hard, but you can handle it because you're represented by the Sun. Whereas if you get the Eight of Swords reversed, you know the person feels trapped and powerless and isn't going to be that confident. So if a card comes up that shows problems, you can't say, okay, it's going to be bad, but you'll get over it. You can't talk to the person like that. You have to realize that they are feeling vulnerable or feeling weak, and so maybe you perk them up a bit, or you talk around the subject rather than hitting the nail on the head like you would do if the person were represented by the Sun or the Magician.
Okay.
So it gives you an idea of who you're dealing with at that time.
Yeah.
And then you're better able to judge how to present the information. Can you be blunt, or do you have to talk around it a bit so that the person gets what you're saying and benefits from the reading and doesn't leave with an unrealistic expectation of what's going to happen?
Okay. Well, I heard you talk once about having the querent pick a number between 0 and 22.
Two numbers between 1 and 9 and 0 and 22. And that gives me two major trumps to talk about. To put them in the picture of...
Why do you say one? Maybe I'm being stupid, but why 1 and not? Why don't you just say 2 from 0 to 22?
Because 1 and 9 are ruled by planets. And so it tells me a planet that's important for that person.
Okay, all right.
And 0 to 22, I mean, I don't tell the questioner that. That's just for me.
Okay.
So I know about the planet. So if you pick the number 8, it's Saturn, which represents discipline and hard work and responsibility and all the rest of it. But also, I usually have the person's date of birth. And so I can look to see where Saturn was when they were born. And then I can look to see the sign and the decanate and the degree and all the rest of it to do with Saturn, which gives me a little bit of extra background information about the questioner. But then I talk to them about the major trump of the number they chose, and then I talk as well about the second number that they chose. So if somebody chooses 6 and 16, 6 is the lovers, so they're at crossroads, and 16 means dismantle and then reassemble. Because if you keep going the way you're going to make bad decisions. Whereas 6 and 9 means you're at crossroads, think it through, because you're represented by the Hermit as well. Mm-hmm. So isolate yourself from other people for a bit, figure out what you want and what direction you want to go in, and what worked and what didn't work, and what you want more of, and then make decisions represented by the number 6. So it gives you a way of having an idea about the state of mind or the understanding of the questioner at the time they're asking the question. even if they don't understand the symbolism of numbers. There's some part of them knows the numbers, and that'll give you the information, and then you paint a picture of their current situation, and it gives them an idea of where they are, and it may remind them of things they had ignored or forgotten or not wanted to face, or it can remind them of things that they knew deep down that they really wanted to do.
Yeah. Okay. And you don't like general readings. You want a question, don't you?
I'll do anything. I mean, but it depends. If you've got, it's easier to answer a question if you've got. But the thing is, if I've got two numbers, I can talk about a general reading because I know the two numbers. But because a card, I in today's video, I recorded the video of the one that's coming out tomorrow. I talked about what was it? The Hierophant. I can't quite remember what I was going to say there. Okay, so the Hierophant, somebody said, can represent spiritual understanding. And so I talk about how somebody can be talking about how they're practical and down to earth, but if the Hierophant is in the reading, maybe the reader says to the questioner, don't forget to figure out what the purpose of this all is and why you're doing it or what direction you're going in, because the Hierophant is here. And there's a spiritual question as well that you need to be considering. Whereas if somebody says, should I go back to university? And you get the Hierophant, the answer is yes, but it's got nothing to do with spiritual understanding. It's just because the Hierophant is this expert and you've got people studying. So you don't always talk about the same thing with the same card. It depends on the question. So if your question's about a mundane topic or will I meet somebody or will I get a promotion, that's one thing. Whereas if somebody's question is what's the meaning of life, then you use the same cards, or you could use the same cards, but you would talk about them in different ways.
Right. Is there any subject you won't touch, like health or stock market?
If somebody wants to know, I'll pick cards and tell them what's there. Because why not? People want to know what they want to know.
Yeah.
People don't usually ask me health questions or stock market questions.
What over the years, what's the most common question?
Don't know.
Is it more love and romance?
Quite a lot of love and romance, but people will often give me some background information about what's going on, and their backstories are all very different. They may want to know, am I going to meet somebody, or when will things get better? That's maybe people ask when.
When
will this happen? When will I? And so the answer to
how do you deal with timing in the tarot?
Okay, so the answer to when can be when you figured it out. So when will I get along better with my mother, for instance? Then you get along better with your mother when you realize that you're the problem, she isn't. So when you realize that, as Edgar Cayce said, the faults we see in others are our own faults. So there's no point in blaming other people. So if you blame yourself, then you got control of the situation. But if you blame other people, you're giving away your power. You'll never get on well with people. So that's one kind of answer to when. But if somebody wants a date, I've I did a video on this a while ago, but each minor trump. Okay, so if somebody wants to know when, and I pick a card at random, and I get a major trump, maybe I'll deal with the number. If it's 5, if it's a Hierophant, I'll maybe say 5 weeks or 5 months or something like that. But if sometimes I'll say, are you going to, let's say somebody wants to know when am I going to meet somebody? And if I pick, I maybe think to myself, will it happen in the next year? And I pick a card. If it's upright, yes. If it's upside down, no. You're not going to meet them this year. So I pick a second card. Will you meet them next year? Upside, reverse, no. What about the year after? So you can't just keep picking cards until you get a yes. But you can also relate minor trumps to signs of the zodiac or parts of the zodiac. So the Ace of Cups is the beginning of summer in northern hemispheres. So you're looking at the end of June. So when will I meet somebody? Shuffle, 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 pick a card. The Ace of Cups, the end of June, or the beginning of June. No, the end of June, when the sun goes into Cancer. Whereas if you get the Ace of Swords, that's the beginning of winter. So you're looking at the end of December. So there are you can use that kind of method if you want to be giving them a date. The only problem is that if people want to know when, let's say somebody wants to know when am I going to get a job offer, or no, when am I going to meet somebody, and you tell them the end of September. You can find that between now and the end of September, every day they're imagining what it's going to be like to meet this person, what they'll be wearing, what the other person will be wearing, what the weather will be like, who's going to introduce them. So by the time the end of September comes around, they've used it all up.
Yeah.
They've imagined all sorts of things and they've wrecked it for themselves. So you have to be careful if you're telling people about when things will happen.
When can be tricky.
What's that?
When can be tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to decide what you're comfortable with, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, I see Joey Luna came in. He is such a fan of yours, John. And see, I can do this. Hi, Joey. Let's do this. Okay, so you did a video once connecting song to music with the tarot cards as sort of your bag of tools. It was really life-changing for me. Wow.
I don't remember.
I like that game of assigning songs to tarot cards. That's fun. Okay, bye, Roman. Tangi, she's got to leave. So time can be tricky. I had a woman come in and want her baby read. What do you think about that?
Just pick some cards and talk about them. I mean, nobody's going to know. Yeah.
She came in with her newborn baby and her 7-year-old son. And I was very young and shocked. I'd never encountered that before. And I did. That's exactly what I did. I picked some cards and read them.
You were probably right.
Well, the 7-year-old is the one that I was concerned about because she wanted me to read for him too. And I thought, now this could be a moment in his life.
Yep.
A moment that he's going to remember when his mother took him to a weird lady that read his cards. And what the cards showed me, I just told him what it was, and I tried to be really positive about it. It was a positive reading, but
Yep.
it just shocked me. But have you had any shocking or just odd things that shook you?
If I have, then I've buried them away.
You buried them away.
um, I'm somebody a while ago asked 25 questions. There was the situation. They wanted to know this and this and this and this and this and this. And I ended up picking a card for each one and just talking. And she wasn't happy.
She wasn't happy?
No. I got this email from afterwards saying how bad it was. And so that was kind of...
That's odd.
Well, she was annoyed. But then what can you do?
Yeah. Yeah, they're not all
that's one in the last 20 years, so that's not bad.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of repeat customers?
A few.
Few.
Not that many.
Yeah.
But some people do come back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I can go back to my beginning point, I don't really care. Only because I just want to do what I want to do, and if people like it, good. If they don't, then...
Yeah. So stick with the truth. Don't embellish happiness, or what do you think?
I think I do say periodically we have to educate ourselves. So if somebody is lacks self-confidence, and if you can tell, if you in your researches look at half a dozen different ways that people suggest you can develop self-confidence, and then the person asks the question about lacking self-confidence, you've got something to say, and you've got suggestions to make. Try this, try this, try this, and see if any of them work for you. And at least you're giving the person something to work with.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the reader's value is, that if they educate themselves and you've got things you can talk about or suggestions you can make, then it's good for the questioner because it gives them something definite to deal with or to work with, rather than platitudes.
Right. Rather than just flat out saying, something
it'll be
negative.
Okay. Yeah.
You can, yeah. And that's where the skill, I guess, and talent and personality come in for the reader, I guess.
Although you get your people.
Yeah.
Because we're all different, and we attract different kinds of people. So my type of message, let's say, is right for the people who find me. But if I were to, let's say, do readings for your people, or the people who find we could find that that they don't get what I'm talking about.
Huh.
It's not that I'm better or you're better. It's just, do you connect with that person? And so it's more about the connection with the person rather than the person. Because you get tarot readers who are really grumpy and annoyed all the time. But yet some people like grumpy and annoyed people.
Right.
And they don't mind that the tarot reader is grumpy and annoyed and and says, get out of here and this is what's going to happen. And if there's nothing you can do about it, some people are like that, but some people don't mind that kind of answer or that kind of approach. So I don't think you can say that. I forget what your question was. I don't think you can say that some people. I think if the question isn't a good fit with the reader, then it doesn't matter how good the reader is, it's not going to work.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I think everybody gets people who fit them in some way.
Right.
And so it's not so much one person is better than the other. It's to do with
kind of you get what you give out, kind of attract.
Yeah. But it's also the amount of information that the person gives. So somebody can give you a lot of information, but all you want is one point. Whereas somebody else only tells you one thing, but you get it and you enjoy it and you can do something with it. So who's better? The person who gives lots of information or the person who gives one piece of information? And for some people, the one piece of information is the right reader.
Yeah. So what can you think of any best advice for maybe somebody just starting out or just learning the tarot? What would be your best advice or advice?
I don't know. It depends who you are. Pick a card to describe yourself. Okay, what you do is you write down a question and you pick a card and you think about what you might say or what the answer might be based on that card. And then you forget it and you leave it and you go back the next day, you pick another card and you answer the same question. And what you're doing is you're trying to figure out not what a card means, but what sense does it make. So, and you gradually get to know cards. And I think that's what, if you want to learn the tarot, that's what you do. You don't learn meanings, but you pick a card and think about what the answer might be for that question that you asked.
Okay. Yeah.
It might be better with an example, but I can't think of an example. So let's say somebody picks the Eight of Swords. You look at it. Okay, here's another thing. You look at the picture and you say to yourself, am I happy or unhappy that this card came up?
Yeah.
And if I'm happy, why? And you explain why you're happy. And in that way, you uncover information about the card. But if you're unhappy, you explain why you would be unhappy to get that card. And in that way, you are bringing to your conscious mind ideas about what the card means or what it points to. Because the Eight of Swords, you know, that one standing in the water and you're trapped and confined. People can look at that card and think that's a bad card. But some people don't like to be free. Some people don't like to have to make up their own mind. They would rather be told what to do.
Yeah.
So the Eight of Swords for somebody in that kind of situation is a good card. You can relax because you'll be told what to do. You don't have to make your own decision. Whereas for somebody else, the Eight of Swords would be difficult. So which is it? It depends on the question and it depends on the questioner.
This card always has confused me.
Five of Swords?
Yeah.
Okay.
He just looks like an asshole.
Well, okay, so you get three. If you take a look, describe what's going on in the picture.
Well, it looks like he won some kind of battle. he's reveling in it, and 2 other people are going away not happy, and 2 swords are on the ground. It's just like he's winning at all costs, and he's spoiled or something. He just looks spoiled.
Okay, so what was the question?
Yeah, I don't know. The
I mean by
question
that,
was, am I going to get the promotion?
okay, well, you've got 3 different people. You've got on the one hand, you're willing to do whatever it takes to get it, or
Oh,
you expect you're going to be defeated, and you expect that you need to comfort yourself. So you get 3 people. You get 3 roles to play, or 3 different ways of looking at the situation. And so that would get you thinking about the promotion. And so, do you really want it? Actually, what's it worth? I mean,
ah.
you could,
Joey says,
if the card is upright, that means yes, you get it. But you may discover that you don't actually enjoy it that much, partly because it's swords. But it
yeah.
reminds me of my brother-in-law used to be in charge of a department, circulation in a big magazine company, and they had multiple magazines. He ended up, they laid people off, and he ended up being in charge of the whole department. And he enjoyed the circulation, but he had to start firing people. And so he ended up where they hated him because he fired them, but he was just obeying orders. But it was just the fact that the job looked really good, but it had aspects to it that he hated, because he hated firing people. And that could be
Yeah.
what's shown in the picture. You've got the person in the foreground, but you've also got the people who've been hurt in the distance. And they need to
Yeah.
go off and comfort them, probably. So there's a lot going on in the picture, and so you go back to the idea of what sense does it make,
Right.
and if you can then get your head around the different activities in the card and relate the sense, what's going on in the picture, to the question that was asked, then you come up with ideas about what is going to happen.
Joey says that this card has been a silver lining for him. Put yourself first is what he believes it means.
Okay.
Is there a particular card that you like best?
No.
I love this card.
The Six of Cups.
Yeah.
Yep.
It reminds me of the past. I like the past. It's where I grew up. That was a joke, a riddle, a riddle that somebody told me. But yeah, sometimes I stay stuck there. But I like this card. This is a stalker card for me. This card has come up a lot.
3 of Coins reversed.
This is the
Five of Cups.
Nine of Swords.
Okay, hold it up again.
Oh,
the 9. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
I'm still learning how to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, that has come up a lot. Now, I'm kind of lazy and sometimes I don't do it, but every week I would do a card of the week and put it on YouTube. And John, I swear to you, I shuffled, and I even put it on the video, shuffled completely. And 4 weeks in a row, I got the Tower card.
Okay.
How is that possible? Does it ever
obviously you're meant to learn about the Tower.
Does it ever amaze you that things like that happen, or are you just used to it?
Well, no, sometimes you get somebody's got 4 questions and the same card comes up 3 times, which makes you wonder what's going on. And then
Right.
maybe you relate one question to a previous one. But I think you just have to, because the tower can mean things going wrong, but it can also mean that if you have a sense that things are going to go wrong, do something about it before it gets bad.
Yeah.
So maybe week 1 was accidents, and week 2 was more aware that things could go wrong, and week 3 was getting out ahead of it and trying to figure out what could go wrong and make sure that if it's going to go wrong anyway, let it not be bad.
Right.
So it's not just that you were a different person each week. So the person who chose the card week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 was not exactly the same as the person who chose it the first week. So you have to think back to what changed in your life, in your mind, in your understanding from
Okay.
week to week. And what did you notice? What kind of week was it? What kind of week did you have? And so examine it and because
My
we
my amazement wasn't that it was the tower card, but that I got the card every single time
yeah
on that. And so what is that, John? What is that? Is that God? Is that spirit? Is that coincidence?
no, it's you. It was you're telling you about you. So
So
you
we
have to think back.
have, so do we have more power than we think we do?
Yep. When people talk about God and spirit, I like to talk about gravity. So if you step off a roof and you hit the ground, you don't blame God. You don't blame gravity. You don't think gravity that gravity did it to me. You did it to you. You stepped off the roof. So don't step off the roof. And I think there's an awful lot of we've got 99.9% control over what happens to us.
You think so?
Yep.
You don't think that it's a chaotic environment and
Nope.
we have no control over anything?
Well, we do. We
That's
have
not
absolute
true.
control over everything. Seriously.
Have
It's
you ever read the book
it,
called
it, it
go
goes
ahead.
back to me in that class at the college. People are much easier to be scared. It's much
Right,
easier to be afraid and to think we're
right.
powerless, and it's much easier to be negative about us.
Yeah,
And so the positive gets relegated into oblivion.
yeah.
So it's not so
So,
much. So here's the thing: a friend of my wife broke her wrist. She was out walking in winter, and she slipped, and to protect herself when she fell, she broke her wrist. Right. So she's right-handed, and she works in a micro store, and does framing.
mm,
And she broke her right wrist. So what was she going to do? She could be miserable for 6 weeks, or she could learn to use her left hand. She learned
right,
to use her left hand.
right,
So what we've got, we can't control the world, but we can control how we react to the world. And
right.
that gives us 99.9% control over everything. Because good things happen, bad things happen, you can be, and how are you going to react? And it's your choice. Are you going to react in a productive way, or are you going to feel sorry for yourself and just waste the time?
Yeah,
So to go back to the tower 4 times, you have to think back to you and what you were going through at the time and what you were thinking. And maybe it was just so that you came to realize that the tower is not that bad a card. I don't know. I mean, but it may be that you were expecting the worst, and you discovered that the tower came up, but the worst didn't happen. So it's really, it wasn't God, it wasn't spirit, it was you talking to you.
That blows my mind that you say that. But it's a deck that I use a lot. It's called The Art of Life. It's got, actually, it's right here. It's got
Florence Shin Scovell.
I'm sorry.
Was it written by Florence Shin Scovell?
Charlene Livingstone.
Oh, don't know.
And it's great because I'm really into literature and fine art and stuff like that. It looks like this.
Okay.
It's beautiful, and each card has a fine art painting on it.
Okay.
Okay, so the tower was, and I won't be able to find it probably, but the tower was Nietzsche. Here it is. What does not destroy me makes me stronger. Oop.
Okay.
So that's what I got 4 times every Sunday. So, but yeah, it reminds me of you. I think you would like this deck because you quote a lot of poetry and you're very worldly in that way, John.
Okay.
And so yeah, so the cards themselves are pretty. I mean, the quotes are really positive. Like justice is Van Gogh, and it says, "This above all to thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." That's Shakespeare.
Okay.
You love that. That's right up your alley.
Not Van Gogh, it isn't.
Huh?
I don't like Van Gogh.
Well, okay.
Just
That's okay.
he's really overrated.
Yeah. I like. Who do you like?
Rembrandt?
Is he surrealist?
Rembrandt?
Yeah. What is he?
No, 17th century Dutch. The greatest portrait painter of all time.
Right.
I like lots of people.
I'm trying to learn the different styles, and there's I can't, William Adolph, and I can't pronounce his last name, but I think it's like Beaujeu, and
Okay.
he's I believe they call it realist.
Okay.
And I like the pre-Raphaelite era.
Okay.
And so it was around that same time that he was there and he was painting, and the pre-Raphaelites did not like the surrealists. I'm learning about, but I'm probably just talking here. But yeah, and Klimt is the backs. Gustav Klimt.
Yeah.
You don't like him, do you?
Nah.
Yeah, I didn't think you did. But and
Is Joy saying that Velasquez is the greatest portraitist?
That's what he's saying, I guess.
I can understand that. I've seen quite a bit of Rembrandt, and there's in Boston there's the Isabel Gardner Museum, and there's a self-portrait of Rembrandt in the Elizabeth Gardner Museum, and I saw it maybe 5 years ago, and honestly, you look at it, it's like it's alive.
Yeah.
And just the way Rembrandt painted with all those washes and he built up the paint layer upon layer, and phenomenal. But then Rembrandt made his own paint. He didn't go to an art store and buy a tube of paint. He had the linseed oil and the powder, and he mixed it all together.
Mm.
And he also used brown a lot. So, but Velasquez, absolutely. Velasquez, yeah. I can't disagree with Joy.
Yeah. I love the Palace Athena Rembrandt we have in Lisbon.
Okay.
Okay, you guys have passed my knowledge up. I one of my favorites that I have a print of is Lord Frederick Leighton, Flaming June. That's me, Flaming June altogether. Have you seen that picture, Flaming June?
Probably. I can't remember
Oh,
offhand.
it's me. And do you have Vermeer behind you?
Yep.
Okay.
The girl with the
Okay.
pearly. I used to live in Holland, and so I always felt
Oh,
a
you've been
connection
everywhere.
with Dutch
Yeah.
painting. There was one morning um, in a town called Epse in the east of Holland, and I woke up and I looked out the bedroom window, and the light was unbelievable. And I think it has to do with the fact that Holland is under sea level, most of it.
Oh,
And
okay.
so there was something about the light in Holland, and I think that's why I like the Dutch painting. But that's a Turner behind me. This one
Oh,
here. Turner's really good as well.
who is it?
Turner, JTM Turner, an
JTM
English,
Turner.
yeah,
I don't know
who
him.
is. There's so many great artists out there.
What about I love Waterhouse. I have a Waterhouse oracle that's really neat.
Okay,
Do you like Waterhouse?
not especially no.
You know,
Also, I was going to. You sent me the link to the Beethoven, but
yeah.
I know I was going to reply with Glenn Gould playing Mozart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
You
didn't.
should. Will you
I,
do that?
I will do. It's the sonata in A that he plays, and it's just so good. Just the
Yeah.
piano, Glenn Gould playing the piano is. But
See,
there's so much art and literature and words out there, and we should educate ourselves and just follow. If we, I'm not saying we should do it. If we explore and spend time in the company of painting and music, then it changes us and brings out the best in us.
yes,
And then we bring out the best in other people.
I agree with that.
There was I used to get the International Herald Tribune in England and Europe when I lived there, and there was I liked it because you got baseball scores, and I was in Switzerland or wherever, and it sort of made me feel connected to the United States by reading the International Herald Tribune. And there was one article I read by a journalist called Art Buchwald, and he was writing about New York in the 1970s, and he said he got out of a taxi one day, and the taxi driver said to him, "Have a good day." And Art stopped the driver and said, "Taxi drivers in New York are really rude. Why do you tell me to have a good day?" And the taxi driver said that he figured that if he tells one person to have a good day and cheers them up a little bit, they'll then tell two or three other people the same kind of thing. And so one person can influence the whole of the city just by doing one nice thing.
Right.
It'll
Like a ripple
amplify.
in a pond.
It's like a ripple in a pond, as you say. So if we spend time reading poetry and thinking about things and reading a bit of philosophy or learning a bit and whatever it happens to be, good art, bad art doesn't really matter. We become better, and everybody we meet becomes better just because we're better. Because I
Yeah.
said a while ago about how I think I began tarot lesson number 17 with, it's easy to think that you're not important,
Hmm.
but you are, because when you learn a little bit about the tarot, then the total knowledge about the tarot is
Right.
increased a little bit.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been increased that way if you hadn't come up with that idea or had
Right.
that thought.
I
And
watched
so
that. That spoke to me.
as over time, we have much more influence than we think.
I'm trying to learn a lot over my years. I've tried to learn a lot about a lot of things, which makes me dangerous because I
Okay.
know a little bit about everything, but not enough to affect anything. I don't believe. But I love, like you, I love art and poetry, and I think we have different things we like about it, you and
Yep.
me. But we're there. We're
Yeah.
trying. That hence the name of my show, John.
You're trying life.
Lori tries life.
Yeah.
I decided one day that I should try life. So
Well, good.
yeah, yeah. So we've gone on for about an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
Longer than I thought, but I loved having you on. I love this, and I hope people will watch it after the fact as well and have some comments or questions. And would it be out of the realm of possibility that you might want to come back someday?
Sure.
Good. I hope so, because I got a little flustered and off with the start. I got the wrong link, and I was yeah. So we'll do it again.
Okay.
And
Just
thank you a
okay.
million times. Thank you.
Good. Anytime.
Okay.
So
we'll end it. Bye, everybody. Thank you for
bye-bye. Thanks for
commenting and
coming.
showing
Yep.
up. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.